has to do with the Secretary of State's office. Treasurer, excuse me. Any questions? Without objection, we'll accept that. You have one? No? Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to move on. We're going to start out with our hearings on higher ed. We're going to start out with Dr. Blake Flanders, President and CEO of the Kansas Board of Regents. And we'd like for everyone to keep it around 10 minutes, if you could, please. Welcome to the committee, Blake.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Billinger and members of the committee. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to represent the public higher education system. Under the Higher Education Coordination Act, the board serves as the representative and presents a budget request to the legislature. And just to tell you a little bit about the process, last summer we met, the institutions bring requests, and then there's system requests, and the board is the first step to really winnow off those requests, narrow those requests, and then have a budget that we present to you. The landscape has really changed significantly since September, and so today I'm going to narrow the list even further and just talk about really top priorities for the board. I would also say that the bill that came over from the House, we see some technical amendment issues that we'd like to work with you on, and a few other issues such as lapsing funding that's already been transferred and some things like that that we would like to work with the committee on. I won't go through all those items today because many of them are technical in nature, but I just want to be sure that that's mentioned. So we represent the coordinated institutions along with the governed institutions, and just we govern the 6 state universities. We coordinate the rest of the system, including Washburn, the community colleges, and technical colleges. I would say we support fully funding the 2-year college formulas, including the funding for the students that I would say they are adult students, and also the funding for Senate Bill 155, which is high school enrollments in technical programs. And so the board is fully supportive there. And then we're also requesting that we increase the state employee pay plan shortfall. So for years, and I have a little chart on page 2, for years, all state employees were treated the same. So in other words, if cabinet employees got a 2%, the university and state employees and our agency also got a 2% increase, or a 3%, or a 5%. Now the difference with the universities, and really with any agency likely, but it's more so there, it's only on the state general fund portion of the, and you've always given that that we can use it as a merit pool. And so if you say a 2.5% raise, that means some people may get less than that, depending on merit, and some people may get more than that, but the pool is 2.5%. And so what I've done there is just showed you, what CPIU, the increase there, it's about 22.89% over those years. And the funding adjustments to our higher education system of 10%, and then losing out the last 2 years on that 5%. But we do appreciate the House providing a 2.5% increase, and with some market language. We want to be sure that market language also applies to our system as well. The House deleted the $32.7 million for the Kansas Campus Restoration Act. We're requesting that after that bill passed last year, we're requesting funding for our campuses and the facilities on our campuses. The state universities are developing multi-year plans for the entire 6 years. We've actually used some of those funds to begin to shrink the campuses, and we'd like to do even more. We do appreciate the House adding $5.8 million for the public universities and $10.5 million for the two-year colleges for student success. A few years ago, we reached out to the National Institute of Student Success. We benchmarked each state university to improve graduation and retention. We've increased graduation rates, on-time graduation rates of 9.7% over the last 5 years. So we're excited with that success there. We've had a 3.6 percentage increase in retention. And when we have an increased graduation and increased retention, we typically see that also drive down student debt. So I'm encouraged by those results. We continue to request IT infrastructure and cybersecurity improvements. We are attacked on a daily basis with cybersecurity, and the public universities and two-year colleges have benefited from state investment previously there. This is an area that we will continue to invest our own resource in as well, along with whatever you provide. And I would just say that it is a danger for our state and for the system in terms of cybersecurity. And then my final ask is to continue the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy. That funding was taken out in the House. They included a $2 million one-time ARPA interest. You know, that bill just passed last year, and there was $10 million put in there. And it passed with robust majorities in each chamber. And here's why I think that is. Depending on the assessment, which one you want to pick, okay, there's a couple of them. There'd be the state assessments, there'd be NAEP. Somewhere between a third and 40% of the students don't read at grade level. Now, that's an easy problem to ignore right now because it's elementary. But I would tell you there's a storm coming because if you don't read well, it's going to be hard to participate in the economy. You don't do well in any subject. You don't do well in math. There's story problems. You don't do well in history. You don't do well in literature. You don't do well in writing. I see it as a huge need to have workforce development for our current teachers to give them the tools they need to make sure students can elevate their literacy skills. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you. I think we're going to wait till the end, if that's okay. Next, we'll have Dr. Julianne Mazicek, President of Washburn University. Welcome, committee, Julie.
Yes, hello, Senator Billinger and committee members. Thank you for letting me be here today to talk about Washburn University. And then running the slides, will you run the slides? Or do I have a clicker? I have a clicker. Perfect. And where do I point?
You'll just point the screen.
Okay.
Forward and back.
Okay, I can handle that. And I just want to share a little bit of information about Washburn. We are a municipal university, and we are an open access institution, and we look a little different than the other state universities in that we not only have tuition and support from the state, but we also have some local support due to the fact that we're a municipal university. And we also have a technical college that's been a part of our system for about 15 years now. We are governed by and independently by the Washburn University Board of Regents. We have 9 regents who oversee the operations and details of both Washburn University and Washburn Tech, and we are coordinated by the Kansas Board of Regents. And because of our structure I just want to always share that we do not participate in some of the funds that Dr. Flanders was referring to, the educational building fund, the deferred maintenance fund, and any compensation that happens does not affect us in any way. So the state operating grant is the support that we receive from the state. We are a traditional residential campus. We do offer from certificates all the way through to doctorates, and we have a law school for over 120 years. And so we have a wide range of pathways for students and prospective students in our community and in our region to be able to pursue education. And we work very closely with our high schools on our technical campus, where almost half of our students there are from high school. And I just want to start by saying thank you, just a little bit about what you have given us over these last few years and what a difference that it has made. And we have received funds, ARPA funds last year that you granted $3 million that helped us purchase a property in town that will become a new manufacturing education center, our Advanced Manufacturing Institute, focused on being able to continue to create the workforce of tomorrow in the fastest growing segment in our local economy and our regional economy, but also in the state's economy. And we were able to, because of those dollars and the opportunity to buy a vacant property, we were able to reduce the cost of our project by about 25%, and we're able to move up the timeline. We're very excited about that. I will say the Kansas Comprehensive Grant, which I want to spend a little bit of time on, it has been very important to us. So the majority of our students are first-generation students, and financial need is often a barrier to being able to pursue their educational goals and dreams. Over the last few years, 3 years, we have received $8.6 million. And we scholarship with need-based funds, with private scholarships, and with university funds, about 75% of our students. Over 2,000 of our undergraduate students qualify for need-based aid, and we've been able to support students in important ways and help them be able to overcome that barrier of finances so that they can pursue their education. And that has resulted in, we do have low student debt. We're number 5 in the Midwest region of the United States for lowest debt. We are working for public regionals, and we are working towards being number 1. We hope to see that in the next couple of years as our data plays out. I also wanted to talk about the funds that you gave us, this committee primarily, that introduced the demolition funds, and we have received funds over the last 2 years for demolition. And this summer, I think we will spend all of our funds. We are going to finish demolishing one of our buildings on campus. We are going to take down, and part of another building we're taking down. We've already taken down 2. Our net change in square footage as a result of demolition, we've done a little bit of building too, but we're going to reduce our footprint by 61,000 square feet, which does change the outlook for our campus. And we do not have as much deferred maintenance, but it does reduce the amount of operating costs we have to support buildings. And we still have, we'll have the best learning spaces that we've ever had on our campus. And then we were able to use some of the capital outlay funds that you provided for technical schools, and we took $1.2 million, and we have finished off the second floor of a building that is on one of our campuses that serves our East Topeka area, and we're able to expand our programs that'll be available to people living in that community. We're very excited about that. That will open in February. We'll be finished with that. And then finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about student success. Very important. Dr. Flanders talked about that, and you probably heard about that from every president yesterday. But we know that supporting students to ensure that they're able to graduate is an important part of our universities now. We've been doing this work for many years, and we know the difference it makes for students when we put resources into supporting them. We are nationally recognized for our efforts. And for an open access institution, we've been able to raise our retention rate over that time that we've been focused on that by 17%. We are currently, our retention rate is 70%, and our graduation rates are in the mid 50%, and we were able to increase that by almost 15 percentage points also. And so it makes a significant difference for our students and for their success and the outcomes that they're able to achieve on our campuses. And so that has been very, very successful. And so thank you for those funds also. I'm going to skip over this slide, but essentially we work really hard to be good financial stewards, and we're regularly looking for efficiencies and making reallocations within our budget instead of asking for new money. And then I just want to talk a little bit about enrollment, because that really motivates what my ask for dollars this year is. We've had a significant increase in enrollment these last 2 years. We've had 2 successive years of largest freshman classes. This last year, our freshman class increased by 27%. We've had an overall growth in the last 2 years of 15%, and we expect to grow again next year. And so we are primarily serving Kansas students. Many of them, over 50% of our students are from Shawnee County, the county in which we reside. And most of our other students are from Northeast Kansas. But we have students from across the entire state. And we really focus on, we're working with our high schools in our area to really focus on the college going rate. And what we have learned is that over this last decade, we've reduced the amount of students who are choosing post-secondary education. We believe that not only does that change what their outlook is on their life, but it also changes our workforce and whether we're able to meet the needs so that our economy can continue to thrive. And so we're working very closely with our high school partners to ensure that students understand that choosing post-secondary education is important no matter where they go to school. But we just want them to start thinking about it earlier and earlier so we have the best workforce of the future. And so our request this year is for an increase in our municipal operating grant to help us meet the needs of the students that we have grown at Washburn, and to be able to continue to expand our programs and to ensure student success as we move forward. And so you're going to hear some of the same messages. We want to continue and actually to advance some of the pathways that we've developed and the pre-college work that we would like to extend to students even as low as 8th grade. We are creating programs that are in high demand, cybersecurity, AI type programs, logistics programs that allow our students to be prepared for the needs, to meet the needs of our region and then of our state. We are looking to enhance our advanced manufacturing, as I mentioned earlier, and to actually grow that into from a certificate to a bachelor's degree program to support that. And then, of course, expanding our education program. We've doubled the size of our education program in the last 2 years, and we look to double it again. And that is a necessity to meet the needs of our local community, and they've asked us to really work with them to find ways to be able to do that. And then finally, I do want to wrap up with and express how important your need-based aid, the Kansas Comprehensive Grant, is very important, not just to Washburn, to all the institutions that you support through that funding, and the students that you support to take away that financial barrier often for students before they choose higher education. And then student success, we're grateful for the funding that you've provided in the past for that. That continues to be important. And then your technical support, the support in maintaining your state aid and your Excel and CTE funding is very important to be able to continue to serve students and to be able to meet the workforce needs of the future. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to present today.
Thank you, Julianne, and we'll do questions when we're done with everyone. Next, we'll have Greg Nichols, President of Salina Tech. Greg, welcome committee.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you as well. Like my esteemed colleagues, I'm here to advocate for higher education Our state has invested so much year after year in higher education, but it's a critical need. As you will see in the written testimony, we've got a lot of data in there, but I want to point some highlights to you. This state invested all the way back in the 1960s in technical education. Technical education is changing. It is a new and innovative thing for a lot of our K-12 partners. They are coming on board with the idea that you can make a great career when you go to a technical institute for that education. The investment that you started in the 60s, it's morphed and changed over time. One of the things that I think is important to note is that we used to have a lot more technical colleges, which were area vocational technical schools years ago. But some of them have merged with community colleges. Some of them are standalone, like my institution became independent of the school district. We had taxing authority when we were part of a school district, but that, since 2009, has gone away. So all of the infrastructure we have throughout the state that predates 2009 came from some local source of funding. So the technical colleges are funded just like the community colleges from the cost reimbursement model for the cost of education. But we don't have that other tier of funding, that third leg of support from a local taxing authority. So one of the things that I'm here to advocate for is the base operating grant to be restored to what Dr. Flanders mentioned earlier, what the process through the Board of Regents put it at $10.5 million. It was trimmed down on your colleagues, the other side of the legislature, to $7 million. We would like you to restore that to $10.5 million. It was, again, a process that the Board of Regents went through. They did what I think the legislature asked, which was ask for what you really need. These are things that we are not able to do. You've got one of the most successful sectors in higher education in terms of student success. Many of our colleges have 80 or more % of our students graduating on time. Where do they go to work? Most of them work right here in Kansas. We don't lose a huge number of students to other states that come to our technical colleges and the institutes. So that investment that you have is right back here in our state. Where would we use the funding? One of the things that we're struggling with, in particular at my institution, is some of our graduates will come out and join the workforce, and they may make as much or more than the instructor that just taught them how to do that job. It is tough when you don't have an additional source of funding to support infrastructure. You got to use the operational funds that everybody else is getting at the same rate we are, but we've got to use that to support our infrastructure as well. That base operating grant support would help us meet the needs of our faculty and staff in the workforce that they provide. It's hard to hire a dental hygienist to teach other dental hygienists. So we're looking for that source of funding to offset. One of the things that I'm really happy that you have been able to do, and for quite a few years, is you've provided that for the last couple of years. It is game-changing. If you come to Salina, you will see the result of your investment in technical education, as well as the local resources that we were able to secure through donations, federal aid. But we could not have built the industrial maintenance and automation building to house our new program without that support. That is not going to be something, the ARPA funds aren't going to be there for us, but that investment will allow us to really increase the investment in our community and throughout our region. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you, Greg. Next, we'll have Matt Lindsay, President of Kansas Independent Colleges Association. Matt, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Matt Lindsay. I'm the president of the Kansas Independent College Association. Glad to be in front of you to share about our work educating Kansans and our requests for you as you consider the budget. KICA, we represent the 21 accredited nonprofit undergraduate degree granting institutions across the state. Among KICA's members are the state's oldest institutions, Baker University in Baldwin City and Benedictine College in Atchison. The state's youngest institutions, like Mid-American Nazarene University in Olathe, the state's first junior college, Central Christian College in McPherson, the state's first college to admit African Americans and women, Friends University in Wichita. There's a lot of history in that list, and I'm proud to serve on their behalf. We have residential campuses and satellite locations in 23 cities across 18 different counties in this state. Now, KICA institutions are, by statute and long-term historical precedent, outside the governance, coordination, and most of the regulatory authority of the State Board of Regents. Except for a couple of very important exceptions, KICA institutions are not bound by what KBOR decides to do, nor are we usually considered by KBOR as part of their budgetary request process, because again, we are not part of the state system in that same way. That means it's up to me to come before you and talk about some of the work we're doing. Let me tell you a little bit about our enrollment profile so you have a sense of the size of student population we're talking about. We serve this year just under 23,000 students. That works out to about 12% of all the college students in the state. That's a ratio that's been fairly consistent over the last decade or so. Collective enrollment in our sector is up slightly from last year. That includes the online programs and satellite programs and all the sort of modalities you can imagine. But while that increase is about 1.5% overall, that masks some of the real interesting work, which is on our main residential campus, where the bread and butter takes place. We are up 5.3% from last year and up almost 10% since before the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are growing our undergraduate main campus populations and significantly so. Given our mission, given our nature, that in-person, face-to-face education remains really important and really valuable. About half our students come from out of state, and we think about 40% of those stay in Kansas after they finish. Now, tracking graduates after they leave your institution is tricky because you can survey them, but mostly they think you're asking them for money, which we are, and so getting them to tell you where they are is somewhat tricky. So that's a bit of an estimate, but we know we are bringing in a significant portion of students from out of state, and they are staying here. You have members in this room who are stories to that effect. That's important because there's this demographic cliff facing Kansas that's coming. We are needing to bring people from somewhere else to come here and stay in order to keep our economy thriving, including keep our communities thriving. And so we're glad to be able to participate in that effort. We are brain gain entities for this state. A continuing port of pride for us, and I want to highlight, is the partnerships we've grown with the community colleges in the state. Over the past few years, we've seen some really amazing work in partnership with them emerge. 3 years ago, almost, all 21 of the KICA institutions and all 19 Kansas community colleges came together and signed an agreement that guarantees that any student who finishes an associate's degree at a Kansas community college and transfers to an independent college starts as a junior, no questions asked. You may have to take a couple of those religion and theology courses that you might not have been able to get to, but otherwise you were a junior. Furthermore, your courses transfer into your major. They are not shunted off into electives. That helps students graduate, and graduate on time, and graduate affordably. That has proved enormously effective, and frankly, the hardest thing, part of that agreement was getting 40 college presidents in the room at the same time. It was not hard to convince our faculty. It was not hard to convince our communities that this made sense for students. That agreement has now become a launching pad for some of the really interesting work. I will poke a little bit, but we were among the first, if not the first, to start making some really serious efforts in Southwest Kansas. Newman University now has a partnership with Garden City Community College for the last couple of years. If you graduate from Garden City and you want to get a 4-year degree in ag business or business administration from Newman, those classes are taught by Newman faculty in person, on ground in Garden City. That matters because most students, and especially low-income, first-generation students, stay close to home to go to college. More than half of first-generation students don't go more than 25 miles away from home when they go to college. So we can't ask them to necessarily leave Southwest Kansas to travel quite a bit farther away to go to Wichita or Salina or Kansas City to go to college. We need to be there and in person. And so Newman really stepped up to the plate to build a partnership with Garden City, saying both of us are doing really great stuff. Let's serve students. In the Wichita area, 5 colleges, Newman and Friends and Southwestern and Butler Community College and Cowley College, partnered to start a thing called Educate the State, to say we need more teachers. How can we make sure that the transfer between these institutions is frictionless? How can we make sure that collectively we are making sure we have more teachers, particularly in South Central, who have earned an affordable degree and can go right into the profession well-trained? You're seeing so many really great partnerships emerge just because we built this platform for the two sectors to work together. In total, we awarded about 5,300 degrees, so that's about 20% of the bachelor's degrees in the state every year coming out of Kansas institutions. Now consider that for just a second. 12% of the students, we turn them into 20% of the degrees every year. I think that's a pretty efficient rate of return. More specifically, we are really overperforming and investing in a lot of high-need fields. 27% of all the counseling and psychology degrees in the state come from KICA institutions. 36% of all the bachelor's degrees in nursing come from KICA institutions. 31% of all the law enforcement and emergency management degrees come from KICA institutions. And while we punch above our weight in things like math and business as well, I do want to also point out one crucial profession, teachers. Teacher education has always been an important part of what KICA does, and 19% of the new teachers in Kansas each year come from our schools, including several of your, every year, the Kansas Teachers of the Year are finalists, are KICA alums. I'm gonna skip that slide for a minute, and we'll go right into a conversation about the rest of what we do. We employ about 4,700 people, and we generate about $1.1 billion in economic impact for the state. And that's a big number. It's hard to fathom. I'll give you how Senator Moran described it for me. He said, well, wait a minute. $1 billion is about the value of the beef exports out of Kansas every year. So do I get to say Kansas is both a beef state and a private college state? And I told him he was welcome to use that in every speech for the rest of time if he wants to. We are glad to be a contributor to the Kansas economy. Let's get to the budget commentary for a moment. Because we are private entities and not state-operated institutions, as I noted, we're outside KBOR's normal sort of regulatory and governance authority, but we do interact with one thing they do, which is distribute student financial aid. The state budget doesn't have a line item explicitly for KICA institutions, and in fact, outside of student aid, really, you don't provide any support for us. We build our own buildings, we hire our own faculty, we are independent for a reason. But student aid is about helping Kansans go to college, and the big program we have in the state budget is called the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. You heard Dr. Matichak reference it a minute ago. That is a grant that goes to any student who graduates from Kansas high school or is a Kansas resident who has financial need and wants to go to a college in Kansas, public or private. We've had that for a while. It's a great program. It's effective. We are grateful for it. Last year, you made some efforts. Last few years, you've made some efforts to increase the funding in that, to make sure that it is increasingly addressing affordability for all Kansans, regardless of whether they go to college in Kansas. In the current year, there's of the $1.3 billion in SGF for higher ed. You have about $40 million in the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. Of that, $20 million goes to students who choose a private college. So a little less than 2% of what you spend on higher ed goes to students who choose a private college in Kansas. That 2% translates to 20% of the bachelor's degrees you're getting every year. I think that's an effective and efficient tool, and we're grateful for all the work you do on it. I would like to draw 2 points of attention for you, though, and the basic of this is we're not asking for more this year. We're grateful for the money you've appropriated for us in the past. We are grateful for the work you do to support our students. We are not asking for an increase in funding. The first is a question of strategy, which is, let's skip here and move forward, that if this body wants to do more on student affordability, we request you use the comprehensive grant as the tool to do so. It is effective, it is efficient, it has rules. We have to match those one for one. We have to make sure that those awards go to Kansans. We have to make sure that we are serving financial need with those dollars. It is an effective program. If you're going to do more on financial aid, we have a great tool for doing so. It also, I will point out that there are other programs that don't face those same rules. So if we're going to do financial aid for all students, let's make everybody play by the same rules, and we'd ask that moving forward. The second is forward funding. So in past years, the budget has included the next fiscal year's funding for student financial aid, including the comprehensive grant. And this is important because right now, colleges are making financial aid awards and admissions awards to students for next year. So thankfully, last year in the budget you passed, you included appropriations for this fiscal year coming up already in the budget. That way, we know how much money we have to award to students as they figure out where they're going to college. 2007 does not continue that practice. So there is not currently fiscal year 27 student financial aid in this budget that is formally for fiscal year 26. We don't ask for more than that. We'd like to see just level funded, but it is helpful for us for a predictability sake to be able to say this is how much we think we're going to have and be able to start working with students and their families on how to afford college. And we'd love to see you go back to that practice of a future year funding for the comprehensive grant in particular. That is all I have to say, and I look forward to answering questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Matt. Next, we'll have Heather Morgan, Executive Director of the Kansas Community College Association. Heather, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to introduce someone I have with me today. The president of Garden City Community College is in the back of the room, here for moral support. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. The Kansas Community College's enrollment has not only flattened, but is increasing. We increased about 2% last year in enrollment. And this year on the 20th day, which is kind of an artificial count, we were 4% up. We have a number of our schools in Western Kansas that are nearing their record enrollments. Double-digit enrollment being reported for spring is not out of the realm of normalcy of what we're seeing. We're not exactly sure why we're seeing such a strong enrollment growth, but definitely people are focusing on the technical education side rather than general education and really focused on how can I get a short-term credential and get into the Kansas workplace. We are hearing from our business and industry partners that they are really looking for non-credit training options. So when you look at the enrollment numbers that the Kansas Board of Regents presents, please understand that that is not our whole student body. The Board of Regents only reports for credit students. For example, Johnson County Community College has over 20,000 non-credit students that they're doing business and industry training for. I asked President Ruda, they have over 800 non-credit students at Garden City Community College. So when you see the enrollment numbers, there is a whole nother side of the house that you're not seeing. The technical colleges also serve those students. We do not receive any state aid for any of those students who are not receiving for-credit classes. 70% of the technical education in Kansas is being provided by the community colleges. About 84% of our students are from Kansas and about 70% stay in Kansas or our border states. We have a number of colleges that are kind of on the border, whether it be Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado, or the Missouri side. If you look in your testimony packet, I included a pictorial economic impact study we had done last year. So the Kansas community colleges are adding $6.7 billion of economic impact in the state, supporting about 106,000 jobs. We are serving over 100,000 students between the community and technical colleges across the state of Kansas. The investments that you have made in the community colleges are really appreciated. We thank you greatly for them. For every $1 invested in community colleges, it generates about $2.26 in economic return to taxpayers and about $9 to society. The number of Kansans who are coming through the Kansas Community College system and working in our state is growing. We are really focused on both those for-credit training programs and also the non-credit training programs and designing them to meet the business needs of industry. The tuition at Kansas Community Colleges is the most affordable in the state. Our graduation rates and the retention rates are increasing due to the student success investments that have been made. We find that our community college graduates are much more likely to stay close to home. 80% of our students are part-time. Many of our students are working and learning while going to get their degrees or certificates. I included basically about 54% of our students are seeking an associate's degree. 24% are receiving a short-term credential or sort of varying levels of credential that's short of an associate's degree. Kansas Community College students tend to be a little older. We often get students who've completed a bachelor's degree and are coming back to get a technical expertise, especially in the healthcare field. They might have gotten a bachelor's degree in kinesiology and now they want to be a nurse or a respiratory therapist. So our students tend to be a little bit older. We are funded 34% by local property taxes. We each have locally elected boards who are responsible for that mill levy. They take it very seriously and try to keep that local mill levy as low as possible. About 16% of our funding comes from the state and about 21% from federal grants. We are spending the vast majority of our funding on direct instruction to students. Skipping ahead, there's a chart in your testimony. We had a meeting with the governor this fall, and she said, well, what kind of waiting lists do you have? Well, it turns out we're not really good at keeping waiting lists, but for the colleges who did have one, we have tremendous waiting lists in our technical education programs. There are 374 students waiting to take a CDL class across the state. 245 nursing students on waiting lists. The limiting factor for our technical education programs, which you can see spelled out here for over 1,000 students, is two things. It's either equipment, space, or faculty, and sometimes all three. So there are Kansans who are wanting to be trained. We just need to have that excess capacity to be able to let them in and get them in when they're ready to take those classes. The funding that you have provided through the business and industry training is absolutely critical. These numbers would have been probably 2 to 3 times higher had we not had the investments that you've been making in the past couple of years. The next chart on my testimony has to do with the tuition and fees per college. I have 19 colleges, can't possibly talk about them all, but listed them in an average community college tuition and fees per semester in your testimony is about $1,900. If you want to come to a Kansas community college, financial need is not a barrier. We have the Kansas Promise Scholarship, which is about to run out of money, which hopefully will be addressed in this committee. But that Promise Scholarship means that if you're willing to live and work in Kansas and study in a high demand area, you can go to school, essentially have all the tuition, books, fees, and supplies paid for. There are affordable options for higher education in Kansas that we want to make sure everyone is aware of. Matt Lindsay mentioned partnerships. The independent colleges and private colleges have been regularly meeting together. We started with the universal transfer of the 60 credit hours. We met this fall talking about how do we be more efficient? How do we work together? How do we share faculty? How do our students traverse between colleges? There are Cali College students who are actually Southwestern students. They might want to take a technical program. They are coming over from Southwestern and taking a technical program at Cali College. Those are the kind of innovative things that we need to be doing to make sure we are as efficient as possible with taxpayer dollars and for students to graduate on time in the fields that Kansas businesses mostly need. I'm going to skip ahead through the partnerships. Matt talked about some of those. We're also working with Fort Hays State University and have signed 2 general pathway transfer agreements in psychology and nursing. We are working with Emporia State, trying to learn a little more about how they're doing some of their efficiencies. We are really attuned to, we have to be more efficient with the resources that we have. We hear from local economic developers every day saying, why did a company choose to come to town? It's often because of the community college. Our community college presidents were on the trip overseas to lure Panasonic here. We are working closely with Panasonic at both Johnson County and Kansas City, Kansas Community College on apprenticeships, on credentials, on 4-credit training to get their workforce up and running. Our students also get all sorts of federal financial aid, which is what the table is in your chart. When you think about the financial aid of a student, a needy student who receives a full Pell Grant from the federal government is going to have their entire cost of attendance covered at a Kansas community college. So making sure that people understand the opportunities through federal financial aid that are available helps maximize some of those other resources. If you're a full Pell student, you'll never access the Kansas Promise Act. We are seeing tremendous increases in enrollment in Senate Bill 155, also called Excel and CTE, that no-cost high school tuition for high school students to get into the career and technical education fields. The number of technical skills that our employers are telling us are needed are huge. The next page of the testimony talks about the tiered and non-tiered cost model. The community and technical colleges are funded differently. If a student resides in the taxing district of the community college, the cost model pays 1/3. The idea is 1/3 from the student, 1/3 from the state, and 1/3 from the local property tax. If the student is from the next county over, I'm from Pratt originally, so if I'm from Kingman County, Pratt Community College would receive 2/3 funding for that student, 2/3 from the state, 1/3 from the student. So it is a little bit different. Senate Bill 155 pays 3/3 for all students. So I just wanted to make that, put this in the packet so you do understand that local property taxes aren't just supporting general things, they're also supporting these students who are taking credit hours. The other thing to keep in mind, as President Maslachek mentioned, the community and technical colleges do not enjoy any of the salary packages that you put together. So when you're adding 2.5% for your state employees, we have employees who are not state employees who we have to do whatever we're going to do for our pay plan too. So when funding stays flat, that becomes an issue about how do you compensate your employees. Finding qualified faculty, especially in the technical professions, is one of the hardest challenges we face. The last page of their testimony, I included a chart, and I would like to thank Nancy for indulging me in updating it since yesterday in the testimony. The last column on the right is what the community colleges are requesting. The community and technical college funding is braided together in the bill, so when you hear me talking about technical colleges, it's because the funding is braided. The first thing that we are asking for is we're not asking for any new money. Every bit of what we're asking for will be below the 2025 approved level. So we are requesting $14.3 million for business and industry and apprenticeships to work directly with business and industry, directly with the Department of Commerce, Office of Registered Apprenticeship to meet their needs. We have had that funding for the past 2 years. It is not new. The Board of Regents did not request it because they wanted Commerce to have it. Last year, the governor wanted Commerce to have it. The legislature said no, that it should be in the Board of Regents. This is not new money. We would request $14.3 million, and that's divided by FTE students. So smaller colleges get less money, bigger colleges get more money. The student success money that we have in the budget, the $17.5 million, $15 million of that was transferred from another line in the budget last year. So that was not only about $1.7 million was new last year. This is not the exact same thing as the university student success. One community college went through the NIST playbook, 0 technical colleges, but this money is what we use to make sure our students retain, complete, and then get connected to Kansas business and industry. What we were finding was sometimes our students weren't getting that connected to that local company. And so this money has really helped us not only make sure that they complete, but that they hopefully get employed in Kansas and stay here. The House had cut $7 million from that. We're asking for full restoration at $17.5 million. Again, no new money, same as last year. Capital outlay is something that has historically gone on since the 70s. A few years ago, $5 million was added for 10 tech community colleges who historically had not received that. Your EDIF sweep took $2.5 million of that away. I'm sure that that'll get worked out. We are supportive of the Tech College Operating Grant. We've tried to be good partners with the technical colleges and work together whenever possible. There were two funding adds in different lines, but still below the 2025 level. One of those was fully funding the tiered cost model. So tiered means technical education. So right now, we get paid about 2 years in the rear on a 3-year rolling average. So what you're paying for this year, this $3.9 million on the last column, is fully funding for courses we have already delivered. The next line there is a cut because students are taking less general education classes. So there's about $828,000 that will be reduced from the non-tiered line. That's because we've delivered less courses. Unlike the universities, which have a block grant, we are paid on a student credit hour. So if our enrollment goes down, our payment for tiered and non-tiered goes down. If it goes up, if it's fully funded, it will go up. The House came to us and said, we need some help cutting the budget. We agreed to give them $6.5 million for cybersecurity, that we could do without that. And I appreciate Senator Peterson helping us find a free resource who can help hopefully advise some of our colleges through the federal government. And then they also said, is there anything else you can do? Well, we were able to find about $1 million of other rats and cats things, as I call them, to try to reduce the budget. There was an additional need for Senate Bill 155 funding for, again, the students we have already or will be delivering courses to, about $3.9 million. When you net that out, if we were fully funded for everything we requested, we would still be about $500,000 behind the 2025 approved level. What your motions did yesterday took us about 10% cut below the 2025 level. So we're not asking for new money, just asking to be held pretty much flat, and I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Was there anyone else here that wanted to speak for any of the technical or community colleges? Okay. We'll start out with questions. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank everybody for being here today and sharing their thoughts, and especially the independent colleges and community colleges who recognize what we're trying to do with the budget and not requesting any additional money this year. I did want to direct a question to Mr. Flanders, excuse me. Mr. Flanders, as I'm sitting here looking at the last 10 years of expenditure history, I'm seeing that if we just went through 2024, we would have a 74% increase in state general fund funding already in the last, that would have been about 7-8 years. If we approved year 2026 agency request, we would be at 207% of funding from 10 years ago. Even so, the LBC currently for 2025, it would be 122%. Help me justify that, considering inflation during the same time only went up 31.1%.
So I don't have the same sheet that you do, so I'd like to take a look at that. But certainly the legislature has increased funding in terms of need-based aid and other programs, and so we appreciate that, and the outcomes have improved. I'd like to just take a look at the detail of that, and certainly I can prepare a better response for you.
Certainly, I'm happy to let him take a look at this, and then maybe we could go to some other questions. Mr. Chairman, we're happy to go to some other questions while he takes a look at that and digests it, if you'd like to.
Okay. You want to take a few minutes, Blake, or you want to just?
Yeah, so
Because unless you want to sit down and look at it, we'll take questions for others. If you sooner do that, give you a little time.
And I wanted to just clarify a couple of my comments too. As I focused on that narrower list, because in fairness, you know, I think there has been some landscape change. That doesn't mean that the board wouldn't support the individual institution requests that were approved by the board. So you'll hear from regional institutions about a regional ask. The board would support that. The board would support specific asks for specific universities or anything that was approved through the board's ask. I just wanted to focus on some of the sector priorities there. So I wanted to be sure and clean that up. But I'll take a look at this.
Okay. Other questions? Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, actually, it was for someone else, so if we could have Julianne come. Just a couple of comments. One, I thought to myself when you took over as president, how would you fill the shoes of your predecessor? But you've done a great job, and
Thank you.
appreciate it. My little bias, my son's a graduate from there up in Kansas City, CPA now, and doing really well. Are you guys landlocked where you're at? I noticed you've been trying to stretch out.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of the community, and we are a bit landlocked. We have been trying to acquire adjacent properties that make sense for us, and our foundation bought 10 acres right across the street from us, and actually 2 other properties, one of which the new Washburn home lives on. But we are not actively seeking to buy properties unless they're strategic. But yes, our main campus is landlocked.
Well, I appreciate what you guys did up north with Kmart, and I think that's going to be a great asset to the community.
Yeah.
So just a few comments there, and then a couple more if it's all right, Mr.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, and then next, coming from Salina, Greg, I lived quite a number of years in Salina. Appreciate the update there with Salina Tech, and Just if you could, and it's kind of a question too, but what are the technical schools doing as far as liaison with high schools? There used to be a program Dr. Randy Watson had, education redesign, and they were preparing students, you know, to get connected
Right.
with different technical schools. How's that working now?
So I'm pleased to provide you with an update. Kansas Cans is their new focus, but I think Dr. Watson has done an amazing job of re-educating our K-12 system that all forms of higher education are important. And so we have seen a tremendous growth in high school enrollment, both in the general and technical ed throughout the state. All the community colleges, all of the technical colleges have made great partnerships across the state with K-12. Our particular enrollment has grown tremendously at Salina. We've reached, when I got to Salina, we had 2 partners that we would teach at their location. We've had many, many students come from those areas to come to our campus for technical, but we have reached out to other campuses now. We have a site in Lincoln, a very small community, but they are far enough away that they can attract from other schools. They were able to allow Sylvan Grove and Ellsworth, which they could come either to Salina or Lincoln to do technical education. We offer programs that are specifically technical, including healthcare fields, automotive, diesel, welding, those kind of things. So the connection between the K-12 and higher ed is very robust. Many of the students are, wow, I can really see that my future can be better by choosing a different path. And the other part of it that's important is continued education. It's not just, I want to learn a skill right now. A lot of students, I mean, I was not necessarily one of them. I wasn't so much a wrench turner. I like construction and building houses, but some kids want to go and learn how to work on their car. And that's a personal goal that they, you know, they learn some skills, learn work habits, learn how to improve their life, but they also like other aspects. So maybe that skill of learning how to work hard helps them in their other path, which I'm kind of one of those guys. I'm on the academic side and the technical side. And we have a lot of students that explore, but maybe that's not their field, and they go on, transfer on to another institution. But most of our students are successfully graduating from us.
I appreciate that. If I could, maybe
Yes,
one
go
more,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And this will be for Matt.
Thank you.
Just kind of point out a couple things here. Independent colleges, and you know, this is my first time on this committee, so coming on here and hearing of these massive cuts, I don't want to lose the thought of the value of what technical and junior colleges have done, my own personal experience, family experience. And so I was looking through your list, just circling. I've had connections with 7 different colleges on that list, and going to go ahead and just shout out, since I'm now in Franklin County, to Ottawa and Baker universities. But just wanted to kind of mention that and appreciate what you're doing and rallying for young people. So not really a question, just acknowledgement there. And so again, with Heather, with the association there, folks, we've got a skilled workforce need and young people to get connected. And so just wanted to acknowledge you. Thank you. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Next, we'll have Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Heather, you sat down too quickly. Thank you all for being here today. We've had some interesting discussions, Heather, and I want to draw your attention to the Excel and CTE graphs that you gave me. Can you explain briefly? What a great program. But can you explain how those students are funded, how that works with our high schools, and where the funding for those kiddos comes from?
So Excel and CTE, the tuition is 3/3, 100%, funded through this Excel and CTE appropriation. I think what Senator Erickson is getting to is those students may be taught in the high school, they may be taught on our campuses. The K-12 is getting 1.0 plus whatever weightings for that student, no matter where they are. And I know there's been some discussion about that to go forward. So the community technical colleges are providing the teacher, or they're becoming our adjunct instructor, or they are our instructor. We're delivering the course either on our campus or in the K-12 building, getting paid for through this appropriation. K-12 is still getting 1.0 funding. I think that's where you're going.
So just to be clear, we're paying for those students a 1.0 full FTE for the secondary, and then we're paying additionally through Excel and Ed for the funding for this program as well.
There have
Correct.
been some interim studies about this issue.
Thank you.
Other questions? Blake, if you'd like to, if you're ready, come back.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for giving me some time to talk with my team. So that number has increased. It's the all funds number that passes through our budget. So just to give you some examples, for the universities and independent colleges, you've increased need-based aid in the last 4 or 5 years from 25 million to 90 million. We think that is paid off because our student loan debt of graduates receiving Pell Grants decreased 14%. Our median debt is around $23,000 for students that graduate. So those numbers you hear in the Wall Street Journal about students graduating with $200,000 worth of debt and can't find jobs isn't the case in Kansas. So that has been an increase. It's also any funding to state universities in terms of their base budget, and it's also any funding to formulas. Excel and CTE was brought up. That started a little earlier, but we used to serve about 3,500 high school students in post-secondary career and technical education. And there was just a very small amount of funding that went to that. Now I believe that funding line is about 40 million, and we're serving about 15,000 students. So that's a recognition of everything that would pass through our budget that would go out to the institutions, including scholarships to both universities, community colleges. We have a new Promise Act, not new, but new within that time frame, and also the independent colleges. So it's fair to say it has increased.
Senator Owens.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to correct something that you said right off the bat. You said that is all funds, and that is not correct. All funds, actually, the increase is about 240% if we approved it.
All of the state general funds.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. All of the state general funds. And so while I recognize that a portion of what we have done are creating new programs to meet the needs of students, you're absolutely right. I am highly concerned with the acceleration of state general fund spending going into the KBOR universities. So I just really wanted to bring that attention to the members of this committee as we continue to deliberate this budget, and I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Flanders, for your presentation. I wanted to visit a little bit about a thing called student financial aid. That when you take that number, it's probably spread over 8 different deals, but the total amount's around 22 million. And this is something that started in 2023 that never really went through committees. I think it was a proviso late in the game. Can you kind of describe to me where that money goes, what kind of guidelines we have to that? Is it matching funds? Is it financial need-based? Is it only for Kansas kids? There's no guidelines to that at all. So I just wonder if you could talk.
So you're talking about the student financial aid that would go directly to the universities?
Yes.
Yeah.
Build on some formula and.
Yeah, so I don't want to improvise and give you incorrect information, so I'll bring that back to you.
Okay.
I can answer that.
Because that started in 2023, and I thought that was kind of a COVID deal, and COVID's over, and I just kind of was hoping we could visit about that a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for Blake or any of the others? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, Blake, I don't have a question for you.
Oh, I'm disappointed, but I'll
I
go
know.
ahead.
So, Heather, would you come up, please? So Heather, since the since 155, the funding for Excel classes came up, when we talk about this dual thing, so who's providing the transportation?
That's a good question. I forgot to say that. So in the governor's budget, there was some CTE transportation aiding, some waiting for CTE transportation for high schools to be reimbursed, I think partially, because I don't think it's fully funded, but partially reimbursed to bring their students from their campus to us. I don't know where that is in the House process, but there has generally been a K-12 line in KSDE to help reimburse transportation. Some school districts let the kid drive, sometimes they take the bus, but there is also another line in KSDE for that funding.
And so you mentioned that sometimes the classes are on the community college campus, sometimes the classes are taught at the school. And so when they're at the school, is that you, the community college employee, or is that an employee of the district that is
Good question. It varies. So it may be a district employee who is essentially adjuncting, so they're getting a stipend to teach for us. It also may be, we sometimes send our faculty into the K-12 building and it's our faculty, so it could be either.
There are.
Yep.
And you, just to reiterate, so currently, what is in the budget and what needs to be in the budget?
In the House, the budget that came over for you from the House, everything that needs to be there is there for Senate Bill 155. There was a $3.9 million increase from last year to cover the cost of tuition.
So that is in there.
It is in there, yep.
All right, thank you.
I understand it.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I have the Salina Tech president come back up here? Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, is there a difference between a Salina Tech and a Kansas State Tech of Salina? Is there two of them up there? I'm just trying to get this straight in my head.
Yeah, we're neighbors. We get along well.
So what's the difference?
Kansas State University has a campus. We call it Salina Tech North. I mean, we call it K-State University. They are providing a variety of different programs. Some of them are technical in nature and historic. The K-State Salina campus used to be KTI many years ago, and they had some very similar. Currently, they have programs that some of the community or technical colleges have as a tech program. One example, airframe and power plant. So they are the aviation mechanics. They have that program, we do not. They have engineering technology, so mechanical engineering or computer engineering. I'm not absolutely sure what they have. Those are technical programs at some of the community or tech colleges. We don't have those programs either. So we don't really overlap in Salina with any program. We have automotive tech, diesel tech, they have airplane tech, if you would. But many of their other or a big part of their other focus is they train the pilots for airplanes, commercial, private, and so forth. They're doing a lot of other things that are new and innovative at their campus. And in the next few years, you're going to see some changes in what they're doing, virtual learning. They've got probably about $140 million expansion through many different layers of funding that they're looking at. They don't really do a lot of our programming. So healthcare, we do nursing, dental hygiene, dental assisting. They don't have any of those programs in Salina.
Senator Fagg.
Follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're talking funding, I'm getting lost a little bit. You told us how you get funded. How do they get funded?
So they are a part of the university funding. You guys, the legislature, line items their funding, and then they charge a tuition. you would have to certainly speak with either Dr. Flanders or them, but they have a line item specifically at Salina campus, K-State Salina. We are funded through the Board of Regents funding that you pass through. It's designated through the cost model. So our funding is 2/3 of our cost, the calculated cost, comes from the state, 1/3 from the tuition rate we charge. Except Excel and CTE, which you two ladies have mentioned, that is 3/3 funding. So the state chips in the tuition portion so the high school students don't have to pay for that. I've been around in community and tech colleges in the state for almost 30 years. So it's a great thing. It is, the students aren't going to be able to come from a school district that doesn't have the capacity to offer a technical program and be able to, let's say, diesel technology. You're not going to have 112 diesel technology programs in the state. You probably wouldn't need that many, but the big high schools might be able to do that. The very small high schools aren't going to be able to do that. So you have to pool that money somehow. And so providing that needed education for a high school student, Excel and CTE is the funding mechanism. The higher ed part, that's where the cost reimbursement model is very similar. Most of the funding that goes to all of us is 2/3 funding. There's a few colleges that are an exception that get most of theirs as 1/3 funding. But I would say a high majority of the two-year colleges in the state get mostly out district for the community colleges, 2/3 funding. It's about 82% of the technical education.
Any other questions? Senator Petty?
Thank you. This is a question for Dr. Mazalchek. So you talk, I know that you're an important cog in particularly the economy of Topeka. So I'm not sure within your testimony that you mentioned, if we just look at this region, what size employer are you? Are you at the #1 employer in this area, or?
We have about 1,000 employees between our campuses at Washburn University and Washburn Tech. And we are in the, if you add all that together, we're in the top 10.
Okay. And you mentioned about, or you share with us in your, in the slide presentation about that municipal operating grant. So what does that have? That's a recurring, so that is in the budget,
It
correct?
comes from the state, yes. And we have received the municipal operating grant for over 60 years. And it's about a little less than 20% of our budget.
And then lastly, you mentioned your partnership working with the school districts. And so do you yet have any idea about what, or maybe you told us, what percentage of teachers that you're helping or support staff that you're helping to supply for the school districts?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever thought about it that way, Senator Petty. We added a paraeducator program, which has been very successful and has been growing, where we're taking people that are in the classroom as paras and helping them move into a licensed teacher. And we have over 50 students, and we're only 2 years into that. And then we graduated, our program is just over 100 students. And so we graduate about 30 to 40 graduates a year that mostly stay local, which is true for a lot of teachers. And so we'd like to increase that to where we were at 60. We have over 150 open positions in our local school districts within Shawnee County and surrounding counties. And so there's a lot of need remaining.
Right, yeah, we have, I don't know that I have this quite updated on it, but we have like 1,900 positions statewide, I think it is. So yes, absolutely necessary. Thanks for that information.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I can get you more information if you'd like more detail.
And then I have a follow-up question for Dr. Flanders. Dr. Flanders, I know you mentioned the blueprint, the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy, and currently well, now I don't think there's anything in the budget, but there was $2 million. I think that might have come out yesterday. looking to my colleague to make sure, but, so you were talking about the 10 million being continued for that. And I know you said about, that we're just thinking about elementary, but I would like to just, if they don't reach their reading level in elementary, then they aren't at that reading level at middle school. They're not at that reading level of secondary. And so we often have had a conversation about remedial classes that you are having to offer then at the regents level. I know that's come up in committees. And so this does have a long-term impact and has a cost that increases. Would that be true?
Yeah, so I can just tell you that I just have to speak to the data as it is collectively. So that doesn't mean an individual once in a while couldn't improve, you know, because I'm worried that somebody's got an uncle that couldn't read in the 6th grade and then, you know, later was an author, you know, that could be, but that's one. So generally, if they do those early tests, a student never catches up. Once they get behind in reading all the way through, they don't ever catch up. And then, so what does that mean? So it used to be, now we're giving a few more students the ACT now, but it used to be that when they took the ACT, you remember taking the ACT as you were a junior or senior, a lot of times it was a senior, there were 4 areas that you tested in, and the ACT, those aren't my numbers, ACT's numbers, they rate you whether or not you're college ready, and it kind of means what chance you have of getting a B in a college course or a C in a college course. So they're in these areas, they're rating you, you know, math and science and reading, and so it used to be that of the high school graduates, about a third, 31 to 33% of the students would actually be college ready, meaning they tested in those 4 areas and they tested that they're ready to go to college. This last year, I believe it was 19%. So you can see this is starting to work its way through the system. Now, at the time when it was a third, probably maybe when I was in high school, when it was a third, actually it's been just much later than that, but the economy has also changed at that same time. So at one time, you know, about a third of the jobs required a baccalaureate degree, and about 10% more of the jobs required some education beyond some training. Now, if you look at the Georgetown Institute of Workforce Development, they do estimations over the entire United States. They looked at Kansas. 72% require some post-secondary education. Not necessarily a baccalaureate degree, but 72%. So it could be a welding certificate, it could be a 2-year nursing degree, you know, might be an HVAC certificate, might be a baccalaureate degree. So that's what I see as a real threat to our economic growth, just by looking at those early reading scores.
And just lastly, about the blueprint for literacy, it's not just, and this funding is not just to help train currently teaching teachers in the state of Kansas, but what impact does it have for the regions, institutions?
Yeah, so we would be training pre-service teachers or teachers going out. We should be doing some of that anyway, right? So, but some of that funding goes to that support. But then we've also offered courses that teachers in the field can come back, and those courses, the blueprint supports those so that they can do that without cost. And we want those teachers to come back and get additional training. And then we've created well, potentially created, because if the funding's not there, that probably won't happen, but a network of constant support for those schools. So if someone comes in and is a problem reader, they can get the support they need. If they don't get that support early, then that's where we see those outcomes not go well and continue throughout their entire career.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I just have one other question, not for you, Blake, but for Heather. Heather, you just touched on this briefly about the Promise Scholarship. Currently, there's $10 million. Well, on the Senate floor, we upped that to $15 million into the Promise Scholarship. And why is it important to think about increasing that?
So when the Promise Scholarship was created 3 years ago, there was a $10 million appropriation and a $10 million cap. Students have 36, I think it's 36 or 48 months, I think it's 36 months to complete. And so KBOR has to reserve the money for that time period if the student's still going on. And so there's kind of a stacking effect. So you may not be expending the whole 10 million every year, but you have to reserve the money and it has to be there for when that student actually completes. And so having the additional money is important also because you all passed a bill to let additional colleges into the program. So without any additional money in the program, we're just going to have wait lists. And it really causes a problem when we're trying to talk with students about, hey, come to a community or technical college, study in demand field. We have this great scholarship. Well, then when the scholarship is out of money, where is that student? And so adding some additional money and resource into that scholarship is important so that because there is the ability to go part-time and have 36 months and you're adding new schools, that's why more resources needed.
And we've reached that cap, is that correct?
My understanding is yes, there was this fall, we were told that we could not allow any additional scholarships for a while, and that becomes a problem when you're constantly marketing the scholarship.
And that's in these high demand areas that we want to have people in Kansas, and they have to be Kansas residents and they have to stay in Kansas.
You live and work in Kansas for 2 years post completion.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for President Flanders, real quick. And this is just a comment and just wondered if you could kind of make a comment on this. When you look at Regent schools, I was intrigued with the Washburn part of this where they get local sales tax with what they do. And so when I look at this list and you see where WSU and Pittsburgh State and KU, K-State, those are big things to those towns and those counties. And have they ever looked at trying to get a sales tax or something to kind of put a third leg on the part, because they're the ones that's really getting the economic development with what's going on with that. So I just thought you might comment on that.
Yeah, so we do have different ways people, now when you say the region schools, you're talking about the state universities. Okay, so, you know, I know the technical colleges have looked at a local funding stream before, such as that. This body wasn't interested in allowing that taxing authority. Wichita State has a holdover small property tax that they received back before they were a state university, which they converted in 64, that is still there. The schools wouldn't initiate that funding. If this body were interested in doing something like that, and then locally that would also have to pass, that'd be something that we could look at. They've always, they were initially created as state universities and as a responsibility of the state. And so that's just a difference there.
You understand what I'm saying about
Yeah, I do.
the impact of those, and what Washburn does with theirs is interesting. So just comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Blake. So you know that I serve on the Blueprint for
Thank you.
Literacy Advisory Board. And I'd just like to revisit that a little bit. So you said if the funding's not there, this initiative probably won't happen.
Not at the same scale. Now, there's some requirements. So you have the, I guess it's a luxury. You can pass a bill, and if you don't include funding, we're still required to do some things because it's a law. So we will do our best to do some, but I don't know how those courses, I don't know how you deliver courses to vast numbers of teachers without any cost. We'll have to try to determine how to do that. But so we're always somewhat on the hook. If you pass a bill and then it's not funded, we may have elements we still need to do.
Senator
Well,
Erickson.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm looking at House Bill 2007, and for your budget, I see from 25 to 26, it goes up about $22 million, correct? From 422, about 423 to about 445 million.
I'm not looking at that, but okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at, so that's about 22 million more. Do you know how much that the legislature gave for the CPI increase for K-12 for 2025?
I do not know how much you did for K-12.
$228 million additional money. So we're looking at 250 million additional dollars in between K-12 and higher ed. And it just seems incredulous to me that saying if we don't give an additional 10 million, somehow we're jeopardizing the efforts to increase literacy in our state. So could you help me understand, with that much of an increase going to education, if reading were a priority, how the legislature not giving an additional 10 million is somehow putting that in jeopardy?
So I can't speak for the K-12 side. I would need, Commissioner Watson would have to do that. I'll just speak to ours. If the budget increases, but it's for different programs, we'd have to apply that to the programs. So in other words, let's say that you supplied an increase to the HEROES Act for those scholarships. I can't just move that to literacy, even though it's been increased. So I guess I'm trying to answer your question. If the funds are if the funds are unrestricted, we could move them there. If the funds are restricted to specific programs, we cannot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Additional questions? Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, will it be today or another day that you're wanting us to remove funding, delete funding, or add funding?
We will do our recommendations on Monday, and we'll do that at the beginning of our meeting on Monday, and you need to reach out to the revisers or research if you have some particular adjustments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That will be Mondays when it will be working the higher ed budget.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two provisos for House Bill 2007, and we will start with the description of the elimination of DEI programming in the executive branch. We'll have that handed out.
Okay, just a second. We'll let everybody get theirs.
This proviso would remove $2 million from the governor's budget and $2 million from the Department of Administration budget. It would then move those funds to the State Finance Council, where a number of affirmations would need to occur for the State Finance Council then to vote to release those funds. Those items include elimination of any positions that relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion, elimination of any mandates, policies, programs, preferences, and activities relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, eliminating any training requirements in diversity, equity, and inclusion for any employee, the cancellation of any state grants or contracts relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and removal of any gender-identifying pronouns or gender ideology from email signature blocks on state employee email accounts and any other form of communication. And that would be the proviso in total.
Do we have a second? Senator Fagg seconds. Discussion? Senator Petty?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know we're not today looking at the governor's department or the Department of Administration. So when I look at this proviso, this is specifically, so this is not, this, I guess indirectly maybe dealing with higher ed, I'm not sure. Could the carrier of the, or the maker of the motion of this proviso speak to that?
Senator Glaze.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This deals with all state agencies, so it would be a global proviso dealing with the entirety of the budget.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. I'm looking in line 1, you say delete 2 million from the governor's department account. So can I have clarification on that?
Senator Glaze.
Correct. There's also a deletion from the Department of Administration. There's also an addition to the State Finance Council account, but the first line of it is all state agencies, and that's what this deals with.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. So the language then is speaking to all state agencies, but the finances are 2 specific areas. Would this be correct?
Senator Glaze.
With one edit, there would be 3 areas because it is then appropriated over to the State Finance Council for release upon certifying that those activities have occurred.
Senator Petty.
Okay, so it's a movement of those two funds areas to then being moved to the State Finance Council to disperse once certain activities are clarified that they have been, or certain directions are clarified that they've been followed. Is this correct?
Senator Glaze.
Correct. So the funds would then be released back to the governor's department and back to the Department of Administration upon those items being certified.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Senator Glaze.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A second one that's also a global executive branch agency proviso. This one has to do with returning to the offices in which employees are stationed. We'll hand that out, though that's pretty much the description. And this one simply states that all of the full-time employees of the executive branch agencies shall perform their duties at their assigned state office, state facility, or field location, with an exception to those employees whose duties require travel.
Need a second right now. We have a second by Senator Fagg. Discussion. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the carrier of the motion, I'm just curious. I know that there are certain times where employees are hired specifically with remote positions. If they were hired as a remote position and had no assigned office, are they excluded from this?
Senator Glaze.
That is correct. They would not have a assigned state office, state facility. That would be their field location.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Senator Petty.
As I'm looking at letter B, it says, for the purpose of this section, the executive branch means all state agencies except the attorney generals, the insurance department, secretary of state, state treasurers, legislative branch, and judicial branch. So these are excluded. So any of those branches would not be covered under this proviso about location of work?
Senator Glaze.
Correct. For instance, the legislative branch is on YouTube all day, so you can watch us do all of our work, so that's pretty obvious. The judicial branch, we're allowing them to govern their own, though I don't think there are any individuals who are working from home there. And then all of the others are individuals who stand for election. So those individuals would be held to account by the electorate.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. I I do believe that the governor stands for election as well. And if we say that the attorney general stands for election, I'm not sure, is this then only speaking to the attorney general specifically or to the thousands of people that work out of the attorney general's office?
Senator Clays.
Not aware of thousands of people working in the Attorney General's office, but well, first, let's clarify, the governor currently is a lame duck. That's the only individual who is not running for reelection by purposes of Constitution. But for purposes of this section, yes, the Attorney General, the Insurance Department, the Secretary of State, the State Treasurer, all of those individuals are standing for election in 2026.
Senator Petty.
I'll stop there.
Okay. Any other questions? Senator Holscher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. How many employees are we talking about in terms of that you're trying to impact?
Senator Clays.
It would be all the employees that work for the state except for those who work for the Attorney General, Insurance Department, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, Legislative Branch, and Judicial Branch. The areas where we've seen the most issues with individuals who have not returned to the office appears to be in the Department of Revenue, DCF, some of the ks.gov employees. So those were primarily the areas where issues had been found with returning to work.
Senator Holscher.
Yes, thank you. Is there an audit or something that shows there are issues with particular areas, or where is that? What is that source?
Senator Clays.
Visits to those offices and them being vacant.
I'm sorry, what?
Visits to those offices and them being found vacant.
Senator Holscher.
Thank you. So nothing really in terms of an audit, just random visits. Okay, I have heard from different people in different departments indicating that being able to work remote is, consistently happening across other areas and other enterprises and businesses. What, in terms of a recruiting tool, do you think we lose by removing that capability?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's certainly the option to create field locations if there are problems recruiting people in Topeka, Kansas, but I think Topeka is a wonderful place and that individuals choose to live here and work for the state because of the benefits and pay that we provide. And if that's not adequate, then that needs to be addressed in a different venue. But having individuals working from home when there is a state office building being heated and cooled and maintained is highly wasteful of taxpayer dollars. So we would like to see either those state facilities being used for their purpose in which they were constructed, or perhaps we can find another use for them.
Senator Holscher.
So it sounds like we need to pay more to some of these positions than potentially, which obviously affects the budget. I will just say, yeah, this is concerning just in terms of how it's written up too, that we have certain electeds held to different standards than other electeds. So like I said, I have concerns with this, partly because of the way it's written up and partly because it's not the result of an audit or other processes to actually make a determination. So I won't be supporting. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Dylan, did you have a little update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's about time for lunch, so I'll make this brief. You should have a document before you that looks like this. It looks similar to the shorthand you've had previously. This one has been updated for floor action, as well as cleaned up a couple of spelling errors and stuff like that. So attached to the front is just the SGF and all funds currently approved level expenditures coming from the House. So that just, we found out that was really only reflected in our budget committee reports, and so we wanted to make that easily available for everyone there. I would suggest, it's up to you, but if you wanted to bring this to the hearings next week, this is one place that you can find the current House position in a sort of succinct way with all of their adjustments. So just want to make that available to everybody.
Thank you, Dylan. Committee, any other questions? Senator Petty.
Senator, Mr. Chairman, I had asked Dylan, so Dylan, I want to make sure I understand. Do we have an update as to how the budget that came from the House was impacted by the provisos that were added yesterday?
Dylan?
So I can speak to that. The report won't be ready till Monday. We found out that our database, this new budget system, our database didn't really track with it, but we're updating that over the weekend so that we can produce those reports so that you'll see like the current Senate position with just your adjustments. Our understanding is that all the ARPA interest allocations were deleted, all EDIF expenditures and transfers were deleted. And if you want me to, I can sort of speak to what the adjustments, or Brianna can speak to what the adjustments, as we understand them from the chair, from the maker of the motion, is on education, if you would like.
I would.
Brianna, would you like to do it?
Thank you, Dylan. Brianna?
Good afternoon, committee.
Welcome.
Brianna Horton, KLRD. So as I understand it, all of the items for higher education have been removed except for the 5 million, which is for community college capital outlay aid. I'm going to find that page really quick. So on page 17, item 5, that item is still currently in the budget. And then the other item that is in the budget still is item 8 for Washburn, which is the 3.3 million for the operating grant.
Thank you. Questions for Brianna? Senator Petty?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, what was that second one you said?
The 3.3 million for the Washburn operating grant, item 8.
And just as a follow-up, so
Senator Petty?
thank you. So you're saying that anything else that is on here under the Board of Regents has been removed?
Brianna?
Senator Chairman, that is my understanding.
Senator Petty?
Except for those two items?
Senator Chairman, yes, except for those two items. 5 million for capital outlay aid and 3.3 million for Washburn operating grant are still in the budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to thank everyone for testifying in our hearing today. We appreciate all the higher ed folks being here. Thank you, and we are adjourned.